Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Shaman healer build for Summerset. Now this isn't your atypical meta type build, this isn't your end game type build. This build is made for small group play. That means 1 or 2 people, up to 4 people maximum. You don't want to go over that because I don't want to say it doesn't work in end game, but it's better in small group play, and it's just a fun build to play, and it's an interesting build. It's something different than what most people play when it comes to a healer. So let's go ahead and get into it. As you can see, we have a 27k Magicka. We are an Argonian for this. You can be any race for this particular build. The reason I chose the Argonian is because the Argonian just has a really good versatile healing capability, and this build is a healer. So we do have a 27k Magicka, like I said, with an 18k health, 27k stamina, 1300 magic recovery. We can get this up to 1600 recovery, but since we're an Argonian, we don't really have to worry too much about recovery because we do have pots that we can use and they will give us resources back. As you can see here, we do have an 1812 weapon spell damage and weapon damage, with a 41% spell critical and a 32% weapon critical. This is a hybrid healer. This isn't, like I said, your atypical usual healer. This is more of a hybrid healer. It does a little bit of DPS, a little bit of a little bit of damage. Not really a little. It can do a decent amount. It can do about 12k DPS along with healing, but it's, like I said, it's more of a group thing. But you can play it solo, and that's what makes it really fun. So this is made for Overland, Dungeons, the Craglorn group activities, the anything, you know, all the way up to, and I will say this, normal and veteran dungeons, some hard mode dungeons, most hard mode dungeons, and it can do the DLC dungeons. It is kind of awkward in trials, but it does work in normal trials. Veteran trials, not so well. So going over the Munda Stone, we are using the Thief Munda Stone because we need those higher crit capabilities. Like you said, we're not a damage dealer, we're more of a healer, so we need the higher crits to make the heals actually a little bit more effective. Wind totally boosted up here. I'm going to check. We do go to a 2484 spell damage with a 51% spell critical and a 2484 weapon damage with a 32% weapon critical. So this is, like I said, this is more of a all-around build. We are using dual stat food for this build, and that dual stat food is the grapes and ash yam falafel. Now, you can run 2 different sets with this build, so I'm going to show you the one that works really good in group content, and I will show you a second one that can be used also if you don't have the first one, like the one that the build is using now. You can use this other set. So Chokethorn is the monster set we're running. We are using spell power pots too for this build, by the way. So we are running a 5 light, 1 medium, 1 heavy setup for this. And Chokethorn is one of the sets we're using. And as you guys can see, it gives you magic recovery, and then it gives you a really good heal over time. The next set we're running is Pelinals. Pelinals is a really good all-around hybrid set. Because it gives you equal spell damage and weapon damage, it also gives you a little bit of magic recovery, stamina recovery, and max health. So that's where it plays really well with this. The next set we're running is Spell Power Cure. And Spell Power Cure, as you can see, gives us a lot of Magicka, gives us some extra spell damage, and then on top of that, when you heal a friendly target that is at 100% health, you have a 50% chance to grant them Major Courage for 10 seconds, which increases their weapon and spell damage. I did try this with the Olorum set. It works, but it's not that good with this. Spell Power Cure with this particular build in a 4-man setting is really good. So the jewelry, we're running 2 spell damage, 1 magic recovery, because Spell Power Cure doesn't give you magic recovery like Olorum does, so we need all the magic recovery we can get. That's why we're running Chokethorn, that's why we're running Pelinals with the Spell Power Cure. Like I said, when you're fully buffed up from all your stuff, we can go to a 1656 magic recovery, which is pretty good. Alright, so that's really good. And then on the weapons, we are using a Mason shield, an infused shield with tri-stats. All the gear has tri-stats in it. The bigger pieces are infused, so they give you more stats. The smaller pieces are divines. And you really need the overall max magicka stamina thing, so you can really place the stats and get a good spread on them. Because to play hybrid, this is like the perfect spread. Anything above 20, I would say 25k on magicka stamina with a high weapon and spell damage is going to be best for you in PvE as a hybrid. But your recoveries do play a little wonky with some of it, because you're either going to have more magic recovery or stamina recovery, and then you're going to be using something else to give you resource return. So as you can see on the front weapon, we are using a shock enchant on an infused weapon. This isn't to apply crusher, or not to apply crusher, but to apply off balance or anything. This is just to give you extra damage while you're on that melee weapon. So on the back bar, we are using a spell power gear restoration staff. This has a absorb magic enchant that does magic damage and restores so much magicka, and it works really well on the Warden, because the Warden does get a 6% increase in all magic damage. So with this on an infused, you actually get a 36% increase in the effects, the enchantment effects, because it is boosted by 6%, that magic damage is. It's also boosted by another 10% in CP. We'll get to that in a minute. And then that is the gear and everything else. Now let's get into the skills. Going over the class passives, you want to make sure that you get all your class passives. And then, of course, on your weapons as well, get all your weapon passives and your restoration staff passives. The great thing about using a sword and shield on a healer, I know it sounds kind of odd, but it is really good, is you do get Fortress, so you get like this reduced sword and shield ability cost. You get this reduced cost in blocking, which plays with the Sork really well, because Sorks already get a 5% reduced magicka and stamina cost, so this plays into that. And the fact that you're wearing medium armor or light armor also gives you a lot more magic reduction, and then you get all this magic capability and stuff with the light armor. But sword and board does play really well with this setup, because you can play it and use it as a defensive mode for your character to get a little bit better survivability when you are in a dungeon. So restoration staff, make sure you get all the passives. You will be using Essence Drain a lot on this because of the major mending. You want that extra healing stuff. We'll get to that. Going over the armor, make sure you get all the light armor passives. I was trying this with medium armor, but it didn't work out, so just take the top 2 and the bottom 1 of medium armor, and heavy armor take the top 3. Onto the world skills. You can be a vampire with this. In fact, I would say it would be beneficial to play a vampire, but only if you're a dark elf. Then I'd play a vampire one. But if you're playing this, the Argonian, don't play a vampire. You get too many negatives from fire. But that benefit of having the 10% stam and magic recovery does help. Moving on to the guild. Fighters Guild, you only need the Banish the Wicked passive, and Mages Guild, you don't need anything. Psijic Order, you don't need anything. And then with Undaunted, you want the 2 passives from it. Moving on to racial passives, because we're not using any Alliance War stuff. But if you do want to use Alliance War, like Warhorn, you are using Warhorn and Vigor. You can also use Barrier and Purge if you want for an extra 10% magic recovery. But it doesn't really fit, to be honest. Moving on to racial passives, Argonian, you want all the passives, especially to make sure that you have this one, because you are going to be drinking pots a lot. You're going to be using them off cooldown. And this will give you magicka, health, and stamina. So even though it gives you a lot of magicka, it still gives you health and stamina as well. Crafting, alchemical or alchemy, medicinal use, and provisioning, gourmand and connoisseur. And that is that. Now going over the skills on our bar, the first ability we have is Deep Slash. Deep Slash is a very effective debuff that you can apply to your enemies, which gives them minor maim for 12 seconds. It does do a decent amount of damage, but really you're not a damage dealer. This is mainly the reason we built into so much high into stamina was so that we could use stamina abilities effectively. So we are using Deep Slash. The next ability we have on our bar is Power Slam. Now you can use Reverberating Bash or Power Slam, either one, especially if you want to play this in PvP. I would suggest Reverberating Bash. With this particular setup though, I would go with Power Slam, because Power Slam is going to give you a really effective damage on your attack. And then whenever you block an attack, you can still hold block and Power Slam somebody, and it gets 25% more damage as long as you block their attack and then bash them, you know, shield bash them basically with the Power Slam. Next ability up is Growing Swarm. This is probably one of the most powerful damage over time abilities the Warden has, because over 10 seconds you deal 11,532, but when you're fully buffed up with all your benefits and everything, and you have that really high spell damage and everything, this goes up to 12,480 magic damage. So that makes it a little bit more powerful. And if you get the spell power cure benefit and your potions going and everything, you get a really high crit with this too. So this will crit a lot, and it actually does more than 12,480. Next up we have Resolving Vigor. As you can see, really good heal over time for you, really good heal over time for your allies. And then last but not least, we are using Winter's Revenge. The nice thing about Winter's Revenge is this is an ability that you can be, say, fighting the boss and ads come in. You can drop this down and it'll put shield on them and have a chance, a very small chance of immobilizing them, but it does put shield, which slows them, so they have to move through this to get to you, which gives you time to keep your allies alive, and then you can just do this again when they get closer. And this way it does damage as they're getting closer, and your allies don't have to pull off that boss to take those ads down. You can actually do it at ranged. And if you hit them with the swarm also. So you can apply multiple swarms and have this up at the same time, so that's really good. The next ability we have is our Major Ultimate, or Enchanted Forest. This is a really powerful heal, and it's a very cheaply costing ultimate. So you can have this up pretty much all the time with the way this build works. If you heal somebody below 50% health, you do gain 20 ultimate for healing them. Alrighty, so moving on to the back bar. On the back bar, we have Energy Orb. Energy Orb is a great synergy. It's a great heal. And the synergy is a great heal. But the thing about this is, the reason why we have this is so you can give magicka or stamina to your DPS and your tank. So if depending on what resource they might need, you can just throw these out and they can grab them as they need them. Next up is Enchanted Growth. This is really good because it heals, and it also grants any target healed minor intellect and minor endurance, increasing magic and stamina recovery by 10% for 20 seconds. So you don't have to cast this too often, but you will be casting it a lot, because this is going to be your combat prayer, basically. If you wanted to, you could switch this out for combat prayer. I suggest not, though. Next ability on your bar is Healing Springs. Now, Healing Springs is really good. It does good healing. It gives you magic a return, that kind of thing. It's just a really good overall thing. If you wanted to, though, you can also switch it out for Corrupting Pollen. This is what I like to use when I'm in one particular dungeon for sure, and that is Dire Frost Keep. I will swap this out for Healing Springs so I can keep Major Defile on the boss as much as I can. So next up, we have Lotus Blossom. This is a buff for you, and it gives you a heal every time you light and heavy attack. So it's a really good way to keep your allies healed, because you can have all these other things going on, and then you could be healing as you're doing damage, which is really good. Now, it only heals one target, so you kind of have to get multiple hits in to make it heal for a lot. Next up, we have Expansive Frost Bug. This is a great Major Warden, Major Resolve buff, because it's a 28-meter range, so anyone within 28 meters of you in your party will get Major Warden, Major Resolve. That includes the tanks, the DPS, everything. And you can boost up their resistances, making them more survivable. Last but not least is Aggressive Warhorn. This gives your group members max Magicka, max Stamina, and minor toughness. And I will say this now, if you guys do not play a lot of PvP and don't want to get these skills, you don't have to get this one or Vigor. I'll show you what you can use in exchange. But use Warhorn. This does really good for your group. It also grants your group major force for 9.5 seconds, increasing their critical damage done. So it's a really good group buff. Now, if you wanted to, like I said, to use this in a different way, if you don't have Alliance War skills, you can use the Destruction or the Resto Staff Ultimate Lights Champion instead of Warhorn. Swap this out to the Stamina morph and put this on the front bar where Vigor is, and back here put Combat Prayer. Because that way you have a good mix of heals overall for your group. You want to keep all those heals coming in. And Lights Champion is very much like Vigor, or like Warhorn, but it only applies to one target, and it's super cheap to cast. So this one gives heals your allies for 7,541, your ally, the one person you heal, every second for 5 seconds. And then on top of that, they gain major protection and major force. So they get critical damage by 15% and 30% damage reduction. This is really good. And if you can keep it up quite a bit, you can pretty much have this out all the time, buffing your group. Like buffing a member. Like constantly buffing members. So that's if you don't have Warhorn. So I'm going to go back and grab my Warhorn off the front bar there. Or for the back bar. And that's the skills. We're going to go over the CP. Starting with the red tree. In the red tree, we have 66 into Ironclad. This reduces the damage taken from direct damage attacks by 22%. Moving on over here, we have 56 into Lights Thick Skin, reducing damage taken from damage over time effects by 20%. And then 56 into Hardy and Element Defender. Both of these giving us 12% damage reduction in poison, disease, and physical damage. And then Flame Frost, Shock, and magic damage. We also have 8 points in the light armor focus and 8 points in the spell shield, giving us just a little bit more resistance to give us a little bit more survivability. If you wanted to, you could take these 8 points and these 8 points and put them into these, but they're really, you're not going to get enough out of them, so it's better just to spread them like that. And this is actually going to give you 1% more mitigation, which if you spread the points out, you would get 1% from all 3 of these. But this is 1% across the board mitigation. So you're going to get that anyway. So it's, why not just get it this way? Alright, so moving on to the green tree. We have 23 into Warlord, 25 into Sprinter. Warlord gives you break free, reduced cost by 10%, and Sprinter will give you reduced cost in sprinting by 15%. Moving to the middle tree, we do have this set up very much like a normal healer, 76, 76. 76 in Arcanus to give us magic recovery to 14%. Remember, we are wearing 5 pieces of light armor, so we do get the 20 or the 10% reduced or 20% recovery. So that's actually a 34%. And then with all the other recovery, we can get our recovery up pretty high. So pretty nice. Then we have 76 in the Tenacity. This gives us both Magicka and Stamina back from our fully charged heavy attacks. You're going to get more back on your Magicka staff, on your Resto staff, than on your melee weapon. But you're really not using a lot from the Stamina side besides Vigor, Deep Slash, and the Power Slam. So you're not going to burn through a lot of Stamina. Magicka you're going to use a lot. So this is why we have this, is so we have that greater return of resources on the staff. Moving on over here, we have 1 into Befoul because I had really no place to put the extra point. 26 into Tumbling. This reduces our dodge roll cost by 11%, and then 23 into Shadow Ward, reducing our block cost by 10%. This does affect our shield, sword and shield. So when we block with it, we actually get a 46% reduced cost. Moving on to the blue tree, we have 76 in the Bless, increasing healing done by 14%. 66 in the Elfborn, increasing critical healing and critical damage of our magic abilities by 22%. And then 43 into Elemental Expert, which increases Flame Frost, Shock, and magic damage by 10%. Now, like I was saying earlier, we have a Frost ability, and we get a bonus to Frost damage and magic damage. So we actually have a 16% increase in our Frost damage and magic damage, which plays on our character really well. We do have 1 point in the spell erosion, mainly because I didn't have anywhere else to put it. And then over here we have 34 in the Master at Arms. This gives us a reduced or increases our damage done with direct damage attacks by 14%. This doesn't matter whether it's melee or magic. Moving on, we have 2 into piercing over here. This is just to get us to the 30% so we get perfect strike. And then 28 into precise strikes, increasing critical our critical damage and our critical healing from stamina abilities by 12%. And that's how we get our Vigor to work so well. So our Resolving Vigor, as you can see, can heal up to 3k on you, and on your allies it can heal up to 2k. So it's a really powerful heal in that sense. So that is the build. That's how it's set up. That you can pretty much do with this as you want. If there's certain abilities that you want on the bar or things you want to change around, please feel free to. This is a hybrid build, so this build is made to be altered and changed and made to work with a multitude of different things. If you don't like using the resto staff, use the destruction staff. If you don't like using the mace and shield, you can use a two-handed hammer if you wanted to, or something else. It's really up to you. And that's what makes this build so good, is it's very versatile and it works really well. So, but that's pretty much it for the Shaman, guys. I hope you guys like it. I did have a lot of fun playing this build and actually would like to play it on live, but I have another build I'm going to be playing on live, and that build will be coming out tomorrow, which is the other Warden healer I have coming out this update. I also have a Templar healer coming out, and then after that, guys, I'm done with the healers and tanks. From then on out, it is nothing but hybrids. And these hybrids can be played in a multitude of ways. There will be tank hybrids, DPS hybrids, healer hybrids, damage dealer hybrids. There will be a lot of hybrids coming from me, because this update actually puts hybrids into the playing field as viable in-game playable at in-game, playable at any level, actually, and they're really powerful. So, yeah. But that's pretty much it for the build, guys. If you guys like this video, you guys can hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can hit that subscribe button. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys in game. Bye.